Presence Power, Chapter 1. Everything becomes sacred. The way you move changes. Walking becomes a sacred act. Objects are no longer objects, but holy forms, the face of God. Even trash and rubbish are divine and to be handled with honor. No action is done in vain or unconsciously. All is performed with utmost care and reverence. Being thoughtless but aware, not falling asleep, grows the intensity of the awareness. Fall into the gap between thoughts over and over again, as much as possible throughout the day. Sooner or later it becomes second nature. One develops a knack for it. Eventually, it becomes first nature. One becomes the gap. Resting and then moving as thoughtless awareness is ever more enjoyable, the ultimate joy. Honor now continuously. Every movement, every action, every object, every form. Honor everything. From formless to form, all is sacred and divine. Don't look to the next moment for fulfillment. If this happens, catch it and bring attention back to here, back to now. All that is happening is a movement of thought that pulls or captures one's attention from being. Catch this and reverse the attention back to source, back home. There is nowhere to go. All is a movement of mind. Home is continually here now. When seeing is pure, everything is God. The body is sacred and holy. All is sacred and holy. Being is always here and now. It can never be lost, although at times being can appear to be eclipsed or covered by the mind. Allow the spacious awareness of pure being to flow through every movement, physical and mental. Allow spacious awareness to infuse movement of the body and movement of mind. The essence of enlightenment is not only having the deepest or highest meditation, but living this peak or valley experience in every facet of daily life. Return to being when not doing. While doing, be aware of being. Enlightenment is everywhere, without and within, at all times. Now, the only time there ever is. The deepest valley and highest peak is the same experience, no experience, the eternal now. The power of presence, mind has given dominion back over to being. Senses are still there, seeing, hearing, but there is a greater power without and within. Outer perception, senses, and inner perception, thoughts, emotions, memory, imagination, is pervaded by beingness, a field of spacious aliveness and power. This is power in pure form, or rather formlessness. It contains all content and yet is contentless. Nothing disturbs or even touches being. Being is beyond all form and is the source of all form. Call it God. In truth, it has no name. Allow life to be the poetry, the dance of being. Let the unmanifest manifest in everything that you do, from walking to talking to simply being aware. Allow awareness to move through you in this world. You are merely a vessel through which the divine becomes expression. Thoughtless awareness, choiceless awareness. One is no longer the doer. The timeless, the formless moves one's hand, thought, and voice. The power of now is the power of being. It is power in its purest sense, pure power, formless yet full of pure potential, the unmanifest. Dip back into being when not doing, when not thinking. Being is the unmanifest, the womb of all creation. Bring being into manifestation, thought, movement, action. Bring the formless into the world of form. Be saturated with the power of presence in all activities. This is integration of the two dimensions. This is why we are here, to birth the unmanifest into the manifest, conscious creation. Words are merely pointers to the beyond, forms indicating the way to the formless. Ultimately, all forms come forth from the formless and point the way back to it. Being cannot be captured in words, although some can point toward it. It is a fullness, full of emptiness. No thought, no concept, no image, no memory, no imagination. At best, it is luminous, spacious emptiness. It is not a visible luminosity, but rather an invisible felt presence. It is God, a oneness, a totality, pure consciousness. I am that. You are that. There is no greater joy than to be so totally present, so totally here now, just being, the joy of being. The discovery of being is the goal of human life. Just be. Simply be. When doing is required, let it be infused with being. When doing is no longer required, rest as being. Return to formless awareness. Return to source. Allow the power of presence to pool. Allow it to deepen and intensify. Just as the movement of mind builds momentum, so too does the stillness of being, the power of peace undisturbed. These words spring forth from that, and so are imbued with stillness. And one whom consciousness has awoken can evoke that same consciousness in another who is ripe. True spiritual power is transmitted through silence and stillness, even when words are spoken or written. The flame of being is pure. It burns away all that is not you. Only the power of presence, God, remains. There is really only one language, silence. It is the womb of all sound. All sound is birthed from silence and dies back into it. Silence is always there, even while sound is manifest. Silence can be equated with stillness. Silence is outer stillness. Stillness is inner silence. Allow silence and stillness to permeate the outer and inner world. It already does. Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. some mystic. Once one is in a state of thoughtless awareness for long enough, the inner and outer consciousness blend. As within, so without. Being in nature then becomes miraculous. All is consciousness once one becomes conscious. Consciousness is the very fabric of existence. Once one is still, thoughtless, present within, then one can perceive the same consciousness everywhere. The very air is alive with consciousness. So too is the sky, the ground, trees, animals, even inanimate objects such as buildings and cars. Although consciousness pervades all, the degree of aliveness varies from form to form. Nature is intensely conscious. This consciousness can be sensed. Plants, flowers, and trees all vibrate a certain frequency of aware stillness. Rocks, stones, and minerals also vibrate with an intense but still awareness. The ocean and clouds, although in constant motion, emanate varying degrees of consciousness as well. All in all, once one becomes conscious within, thoughtless, empty, yet full of presence, the world becomes conscious without. Consciousness recognizes consciousness. This is a conscious universe, becoming aware of itself through the human form. The intensity of presence varies from time to time. At times it burns more fiercely than others, but it is always the same fire, the light of consciousness. The light of consciousness has a twofold purpose. On the one hand, it is whole, content, and complete in itself. It is formless. On the other hand, it seeks expression, creative expression, through the world of form. This can be through the creation of form itself, or through conscious creation through the human form. When anything creative is done through presence, the creativity is an end unto itself. In fact, everything done in a state of presence is creative by nature. Either consciousness is intensifying in formlessness, or consciousness is becoming manifest through form, speaking, writing, action. Ultimately, consciousness is creating more consciousness. The universe is evolving. There are no mistakes. This is a conscious universe, at once formless and form. The driving force of the universe, the impulse of evolution, is creativity through form and then awakening through that form back into formlessness. Through form, the formless becomes conscious of itself. Currently, this is taking place through the human form. Through human consciousness, the universe is becoming aware of universal consciousness. Through presence, all becomes a creative act. Thinking, writing, speaking, walking. One's entire life then becomes a living work of art. We all have different gifts and abilities. When one becomes conscious, the universe will manifest through you unique creative expressions. Even if one is mowing the yard, when done in a state of presence, it is done divinely. The inner goal of human life is to awaken. The outer goal or purpose varies from individual to individual and may change over time. Ultimately, awakened humans are destined to become conscious co-creators with the universe. Where these insights come from, I cannot say. They are from a state of presence. They flow freely from awareness, spacious emptiness, through this mind and into expression. It is such a joy to write through presence. When presence arises, all becomes joyous, action or inaction. In a sense, all becomes an act of creation, conscious creation, when done through presence. Doing is stillness in action. Being is stillness at rest. There are two movements in presence. One is outward toward the world of form. This is in thinking, moving, doing. The other is inward, back to source. This is simply resting as being. Once awakened, life becomes a dance between these two movements, doing and being. In the state of presence, there is no wanting. A higher or deeper power moves through you. Ego or identity becomes replaced with the power of presence, a fullness of emptiness. The person is absent, and the light of consciousness is present. Every action or inaction becomes a kind of dance, the dance between doing and being. Presence infuses all movement or non-movement, and all of life becomes a continuous work of art, a dance, a poetry, a painting. Life is the dancer, the poet, the painter, and you are the art. The power of presence, the light of presence, dispels the darkness. Pure being reemerges or resurfaces. Mind, emotion, thoughts, and feelings subside. What remains is one's essence, the original face. Awakening is also a remembrance. Consciousness knows itself. It has just forgotten itself through the veil of the mind and identification. Once all that is not you falls away, the light that is always there shines unobstructed. Like the sun, the light of consciousness is self-luminous. Being, consciousness, bliss. This is the ancient saying of India, Sat Chit Ananda. There is no greater discovery, and indeed no greater joy, than Sat Chit Ananda. This is our true nature. Peace, joy, acceptance, surrender are all qualities that come along with self-discovery. To be thoughtless yet aware is the key. Being, consciousness, bliss is our natural state. This natural state is empty of thought, emotion, memory, imagination, identity, self, and yet is full of consciousness, pure, unadulterated, pristine. To be in the natural state is rejuvenating. When the functions of the mind are needed, they are enhanced, having rested and been refreshed. A clarity arises, seeing is clear. The creativity of the power of Source is endless. Once a human is in touch with the power of Source within, its expression through that individual is unique and aligned with the creative impulse of the universe. One creates not through effort or will, but rather one becomes a vessel or channel through which creative energies simply flow. Unobstructed by ego or identity, A human in touch with Source is open to the formless expression through form. Be it dancing, singing, writing, ultimately one's very life becomes a creative work of art. Thoughtless awareness, where it begins. All is born out of thoughtless awareness. Thoughtless awareness is the cosmic womb and tomb. All is born out of it and dies back into it. Being is just that, to be. As the muddy water in a pond or lake may settle in time, revealing the original clarity of the water, so too do thoughts and feelings settle in time, revealing the original essence of our being. Presence or awareness is always the answer. When any sticky thought or powerful emotion seems to pull one into identification, allow presence to strengthen. By and by the light will dispel the darkness, if not suddenly, then with gradual dissolution. All roads lead to home. Rather, all fingers point to presence. Abide as awareness, as consciousness, as much as possible. Then, when challenges arise, bring awareness to meet them. The rubber meets the road in daily life when challenges arise. Strengthen the power of presence as much and as often as possible with the little things in life, so when the bigger things arise, you will have the spiritual muscle to handle them in presence. This is integration. These insights are not only for the one who is ready to hear them, but also for the one who is writing them, to strengthen, deepen, and reinforce the consciousness behind it all. Ultimately, these words are from consciousness to consciousness, regardless of who reads them and how often. This is a sharing from the whole back to the whole, and thus is timeless, fresh, and ever new. Consciousness, awareness, presence are all synonyms for one another, used interchangeably to point back home to the source. More synonyms. The beauty and simplicity of the joy of being. Awareness is a flame. It can be spread from person to person like the flame from one candle to the next. Like a dimmer dial, the degree or intensity of presence may vary according to how much it is turned on. There is no personal will when consciousness awakens in a human being. In fact, there is no person. The human then becomes a true human being. Then the will of the whole moves through that individual. The saying from the Bible, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done," then takes on a whole new meaning. In truth, there is no free choice in the higher order of things. Consciousness moves these cosmos. It is all the will of consciousness. Turn the dial of the dimmer switch on full blast as often as possible and abide as that. Of course, it will vary over time and circumstance. Become familiar with this light. Develop a taste for it. Love it. It is your own being. It is shared being. It is the essence of the whole. It is God. The portal to presence is always now. Now is a continuous opportunity. True fulfillment is in being. Dive into the now as much as possible. There is no end to its depth. Again, thoughtless awareness is the key. All of life becomes a continuous pilgrimage. From here to here, every action becomes sacred, to live in prayer. In a state of presence or awareness, every action becomes right action, aligned with the power and will of the universe. Listen to the silence and stillness within. This is where intuition arises. It will guide you. Any moment can give you access to the now. This is the only portal. Allow creativity to move through you, not by you. Even if the light of consciousness or presence is dim, be in that as fully as possible. Keep the creative juices flowing by tapping into that inner stillness and spaciousness. These words come from looking within by touching that inner dimension of living silence and mirroring it back into the world. Dissolve in the light of being, the light of consciousness. All that isn't you evaporates or is dispelled. All that remains is light. You are that light. Words, concepts, images become simply irrelevant in that light. However, language must be used at some point. Silence is best otherwise. Being immersed in the light of God is intense. Conscious doing equals doing while in a state of being, integration. Life is continuously changing on the surface, but the depths are absolutely still, unmoving, unchanging. When thinking is not needed, dip back into the depths of being. It is indeed endless. Expressions of and from this dimension of consciousness are endless and vary from individual to individual. The universe is infinitely creative in its expression in form and infinitely vast in its non-expression in the formless. Dive deeper and deeper into the now, into being. The depths are fathomless. Nothing new is ever said from presence. Silence, stillness is the ever new language. Silence, stillness is radiantly alive and continually fresh. It is a living field of energy, pregnant with all possibilities. These words spring forth from that silence, stillness, and though there is a coherence and meaning to them, it is not so much what they say, but rather what they transmit, that energy frequency. These words contain a power, the power of presence. They come from beyond the mind, yet are filtered through the mind. Those who have become silent and still can go on creating endlessly. Creation is as endless as the depths of silence are bottomless. Creation of form comes from the infinite depths and heights of the formless. Presence power. Insights from the depths of being. Chapter 2. The writing continues from the depths of being. No thought is given to what is being written. The intensity of presence is enough. Whatever is written or spoken from there carries that light, that stillness, that silence. Resting in being is a powerful practice, if one may call it that. Bringing that power into daily life and activities is the challenge and the aim. Be aware of the pull or momentum of mind. This is desire, grasping, attachment. This is the whole trick of the illusion of reality. When wanting ceases, one comes to rest naturally in the light and fullness of being. The cycle of karma is broken for however long. One is free and moves freely, without thought, aim, or intention. This is Wu Wei, that is referred to in Eastern traditions, action through inaction. Action without the pull, desire, or push, fear of the mind. When one is established in the natural state, being, seeing becomes clear. There is no veil, thoughts, emotions, conceptual content of any sort to cover. Seeing is direct and unclouded. This is why the ancient mystics of India were called seers. Desire, the pull towards, and fear, the push away, are the two movements of the ego, or mind-made self. When there is no pull or push in one's action, this is Wu Wei. This is also known as karma yoga. There is neutral action. There is also no attachment to the outcome of action, whether it bears fruit or not. One is simply here now, responding to the needs of the moment. If there are no needs, one simply is the moment. This is the essence of enlightened living. The light of presence may vary in intensity at times. Stay with whatever degree of presence is there and go into that as fully as possible. Desire is a disturbance to the centeredness of being. Watch the pull or push of the mind. This gives apparent life to the ego. In egolessness, there is no sense of self, of identity. There is no attraction to or repulsion of anything. One becomes an empty vessel, so to speak. The whole moves through one. Only then is the will of the whole and the will of one in alignment. The purpose of a human life is to discover spacious presence, being, and live it out in daily life. By and by, being becomes more intense. The light of awareness is self-luminous. There is no thought, but an intense wakefulness. Dip into not knowing, into thoughtless awareness as often as possible. Become familiar and comfortable with it. Love it. It is the true essence of who you are, being. Being is inherently peaceful, joyous. It is the joy into itself. It is the proverbial peace that passes all understanding. There is no mind, although the mind may still be used. But now the mind is an instrument or a tool. When it is not used, it is put aside, and the peace prevails. The power of presence is the fragrance of being. Being is the absolute stillness of the inner world. There is no content within, no thought, no emotion, no image, no memory, no imagination, no past and no future. There is only the timeless present, the now, and there is a fullness of pure potential. Any content can manifest from this womb of creation. Being is one aspect of a conscious human life. The other is doing. The doing, whether physical or mental, must be done in such a way that the being dimension is not lost. This is integration. One is then a true human being. This is why we are here. I am. There's not much more to say. It is best to just be. When filled with light, know when enough is enough. When there is a call for action, take to it. Otherwise, rest in and as stillness. Being is stillness at rest. Stillness can also be in motion, but there is no doer. Mind is empty, but not absent. It becomes empowered or informed by stillness. Continually dip back into being when the mind is not needed. Then, when it is, it will have the saturation of silence. Being does not seek or repel anything. Being is a fullness, a wholeness, a holiness. The person is absent, and God is present. In truth, nothing can really be said about being. All words fail utterly. Silence is best. But the silence is not a negative silence. It is a positive silence, full of peace, love, joy. This is the divine language which all the mystics have known. Look within. Speak from that wellspring of inner silence. These words are not aimed at the individual, but rather beyond the individual, beyond mind. The silence or stillness in the reader will recognize the silence and stillness in the writer. It is the same energy. The transmission of energy in these words is always the same, from consciousness to consciousness. It is impersonal. It is indeed a mystery how living spiritual teaching is shared. It is shared more like a flame igniting from one candle to another. It is just natural to be with the silence, the stillness. This is no separation. You are that in essence. Silence is all around if one is alert and sensitive enough to it. Every sound is birthed from it and dies back into it. The silence without is equivalent to the stillness within. With a still mind, this is readily perceivable. Allow the stillness to grow within. The more one spends with it, the more delicious it becomes. It is an acquired taste, but the most delectable. Inner silence and stillness are there when mind is at rest. This is no mind. This is meditation. It is not a doing, it is being. Allow this being to inform or flow into all doing. There is being at rest, and there is being in motion. It is of utmost importance to stay in touch with these inner depths. The inner pool is endless. Once conscious contact with this reservoir is made, life is truly fulfilling. In truth, there is no genuine fulfillment before then. Now, all is an eternal now, the ultimate joy. The power of presence has a dimmer dial. Allow it to turn to maximum capacity and bathe in that light. The light of consciousness, the mountainous heights and bottomless depths are all metaphors for the natural state, for being. There have been many names for contentless consciousness throughout the ages: nirvana, Tao, the original face, moksha, enlightenment, and so on. In truth, all names fail utterly to describe the nameless, but they may point the way. There is no way to the pathless path. The whole journey is from here to here, from mind to no mind, from person to presence. Dissolution of mind, of egoic identity, is the next stage of human evolution. The mind can still be used, but it will no longer use you, so to speak. Freedom is priceless, and yet it will cost you everything you thought you are, namely your identity, the false self. What emerges is your truer essence, no self. This is the oneness with the universe. This is the oneness of consciousness. The empty boat, the sound of one hand clapping. These are all devices to stop the mind. When the mind stops, you are not, and God is. The events of the outer world are ever changing. So too are the events of the inner world, thoughts, feelings, etc. But being is not an event, and it is ever the same, changeless amidst of changing periphery. Being is timeless, ever present, ever the same, stainless and untouched by anything phenomenal in this world. It is not of this world, yet it is the essence of this world. Being is primordial, unborn. It is the cosmic womb before all of creation. All of creation arises from it and passes back into it. What was there before the Big Bang? Being. What is here now? Being. What will be there after the dissolution of time in all forms? Being. Being is impersonal awareness. It belongs to no one, yet is the essence of everyone. It is pure, unadulterated consciousness, unmixed with any content. Yet this consciousness is becoming aware of itself through the human form. Humans do not awaken. Consciousness awakens from humans. This is enlightenment. What more can be said about being? About consciousness? Well, words could go on and on, infinitely pointing toward it. It is an inner pointing. Sages throughout the ages have used different language to approximate it. There is the proverbial finger pointing to the moon. Don't mistake the finger for the moon. A jump must be made. In this case, all words are just fingers pointing at best. A jump must be made, and the jump is within. Being is infinitely peaceful and content in itself. However, with a changeful outer world, the changelessness of the inner world becomes more prominent. Perhaps this is the whole reason behind manifestation, for being to lose itself in form, only to rediscover itself as the formless. Return to the present moment as often as possible. There is nowhere else to go. Everything else is just a movement of mind into past or future. Attention is also a movement of mind, whether one gives attention to the inner world of form, thoughts, feelings, memory, etc., or outer world of form, people, places, things, is irrelevant. Attention is a form of psychic energy, and whatever it is given to grows in power. When attention is given to the present moment, it dissolves in rest. Then one is home in being. Otherwise, one is continuously wandering in the inner or outer world. When attention is given to the present moment, that too grows in power. This power pools or accumulates in the here and now, instead of being wasted in countless other directions. Sensory perceptions are still there, but something of vastly greater significance is realized: your true nature, boundless being. Become comfortable with not knowing, with thoughtless awareness. This is not absent-mindedness. In fact, one is fully alert, yet not thinking. Abide in this state as frequently and consistently as possible. Then the world transforms by itself. The other shore is reached. Not that one has gone anywhere. This is the whole pilgrimage, from here to here. Being is continually fresh, continually new. It is a continuous discovery of the present moment, of the now. Being never grows stale or old or boring. It is an intense aliveness that cannot be seen or touched. At best, it can be felt, pure feeling. This is not emotion, however. It is a oneness, pure, unchanging, yet ever new. Dwell or abide in the stateless state. This is joy. This is bliss. This is the eternal essence of the universe. Einstein once said that he wants to know the mind of God. This is the mind of God. However, it is not mind, but rather no mind, pure being. Mind cannot approximate being. It cannot touch the depths, the beatitude, the exaltation of its glory and mystery. Those who have known will know these truths. Otherwise, they are merely words to be contemplated or debated. There is no room for debate here. These words are not for the mind. At best, they may still quiet the mind. Being is ultimately beyond all description. Once discovered, it is a remembrance, a familiarity. One knows this. One has been here before, if only at the time of death. The discovery of being is the awakening of consciousness from the mind. This is enlightenment, but this is not enough. It must be lived and integrated into daily life. Then it becomes conscious living. Enlightenment is a kind of death. It is a death to all that you are not, the ego, identity, personality. Although remnants of these remain, and may resurface from time to time. Enlightenment is the birth of pure consciousness through the human form. Once awakened from form, consciousness is continually dying to the past, dying moment to moment to the previous egoic structures of identity. Simultaneously, consciousness is continually birthing itself in the ever-new present moment. Being is indeed ineffable, yet there is something that wants to share this revelation with others. Mystics throughout the ages have all failed to express that which they have realized in words. Yet they have continued to try. Why? There is an inherent joy in sharing of this joy. The silent transmission is best when the student is ripe enough for the teacher, but not all are ready for such communion. When silence fails, words are needed, but these words carry the frequency of that silent energy. In this sense, words can awaken the silence in one who is ready. All this writing is a sharing of the bliss of being from the source back to the source. There is nothing personal involved. Whoever is writing or reading is irrelevant as a person. This is coming from the whole back to the whole. This is how the sharing has always been throughout the millennia and will always be. There is an overflow of boundless energy that wants to be shared and expressed. It is given freely, showered into existence by existence. This is the miracle. The more that is given, the more there is to give. This is a universal law. The universe is infinitely creative. There are infinite ways to say the same thing, but the sharing is all the same. Certain drugs can give one a taste of thoughtless awareness, of no mind. But this is just a taste, and one usually pays a high price for it. All the searching and seeking in this world is to discover that which we are in essence, our eternal nature. Call it Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, or God. It is all the same. All this writing is an effort of love to share what otherwise is impossible to share. Really, there is no effort. There is an effortless flow and effortless giving. There is no author of these words. The author is consciousness itself. Presence Power. Insights from the Depths of Being. Chapter 3. The vast, spacious emptiness of being has no agenda. There is no desire, no will, no lack. There is fullness, completeness, wholeness. While the intensity of this purity may vary, the taste is all the same. Boundless presence. There is no beginning, no end. It is a oneness where the observer and the observed have melted together. There is no other. All is a totality. There is only so much language can convey in describing this stateless state. However, words may point to it. Words that are not frequently used in everyday parlance. These words may serve as a springboard to make that jump into the beyond. But ultimately, the words need to be dropped. The jump must be made into the vast cosmic spaciousness. Words, at best, are only pointers. Different pointers work for different individuals. Once one gets the point, the pointer may be dropped, and the individual too. This writing is intended to capture the essence of presence or being. Perhaps capture is not the right word. Reveal may be better. This writing is intended to reveal the essence of presence. There is not much for the mind to think about in reading these words. If anything, the mind should be thinking less, or even not at all. There is such joy in not thinking, in just being. This doesn't mean that one cannot think, just that thinking is not necessary at the moment and thus set aside. This writing is as much a meditation as is the reading. There is no doer. This applies to both the writer and the reader. Just as there has been a collective unconsciousness in humanity, so too has there been a collective consciousness. It has been an awakening consciousness since the first human being became aware, however many millennia ago. Since the first Buddha, the collective human awakening consciousness has been growing. You and I are part of that lineage, of that evolution. How do I know these words to be true? It is a deep inner knowing. Once one awakens to that mystery within, there is endless wisdom there. It has always been there. Where else could it come from? Responding to the needs of the moment, the song goes on singing. The words keep on coming. In truth, this is a song of nothing. Not nothing in the negative sense, but rather of no thing. This is the song of being. In that sense, it is also the song of everything, of the totality, of the whole. There is such joy in sharing these words. If there is joy in reading them, the reader is on the right path. Once one awakens, there is tremendous gratitude for the whole of life, for the whole of existence. There is also a tremendous thankfulness for all who have awakened before, for all who have come to know the truth of their being. A great love arises for everyone and everything. This is not a personal love, but rather impersonal. It is a thankfulness, a gratitude for being freed from the bondage of mind and egoic identity. Awakening, in many cases, may be a process. One may have moments or even extended sessions of freedom, only to return to egoic identity and thinking. Despair not. This movement has a will and intelligence of its own. Every time one discovers one's innermost essence, one's being, it is fresh and new. There is no greater realization than this. All the wealth of the world cannot substitute for this inner wealth and well-being. Self-remembrance, as Gurdjieff called it, is what the whole human existence is all about. It is a homecoming. One returns to one's true essence and source of life. There is an undoubted knowing that life was not in vain. True fulfillment occurs. As one becomes more and more comfortable with being, it deepens and becomes richer. The joy is immeasurable. Life is continuously moving and changing on the surface, on the periphery. However, in its depths, in its center, life is completely unmoving and unchanging. This is not a stagnant state, but rather a dynamic and intensely alive stillness that is at the heart of all life in this universe. How does one know these statements to be true? Once one becomes aware of one's inner essence, one also intuitively knows this to be the inner essence of all. How could it be otherwise? One never knows what words will flow next. This is the art of abiding and not knowing, in remaining as presence. The effort here is really to share the energy of being, of spacious awareness, in words. External situations are in continuous flux, but the inner situation does not change. It is luminous, spacious emptiness, full of consciousness and consciousness alone, bare, pure, untouched, and uncontaminated by any inner noise. The outer life will continue to test and challenge you, but the inner life is changeless, always at peace, undisturbed. One walks in the world, in the outer appearance of things, but one is not of this world in the inner dimension. Even as these words are being written, life on the periphery is a continuous test to the authenticity of the light of the inner truth. We all carry this light within. The purpose of this human life is to discover this light and live it in daily life. These words are an overflowing of that endless pool of living inner silence and stillness. The discovery of one's innermost essence, being, is the only salvation in this world. Without this depth dimension in life, all else is, as Shakespeare put it, a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. The good news is that nothing is truly in vain, as all roads eventually lead home. It may take lifetimes, but this is the ultimate destiny of humanity, and the universe is infinitely patient. Once the being dimension becomes more and more the priority in life, life becomes truly fulfilling. All else is secondary. As Jesus is reported to have said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else shall be added unto you." In truth, this kingdom of God is within. It is the innermost depths of being. Until this discovery is made, there will always be desire. There will always be lack, a sense of something missing in life. In fact, the original definition of sin is to miss the mark. The original sin is to forget who we are, forgetfulness of being. All the individual and collective woes of humanity stem from this. Otherwise, bringing being into this world is the fruition of a human life. This is enlightenment. This is Buddhahood. What one does from there is in the alignment with the will of the whole one has achieved. The bliss of being. There is nothing comparable. In truth, the moment of sexual climax, orgasm, is the closest natural glimpse of samadhi, enlightenment, or being. For this moment one is total. There is no mind, no past, no future. One is wholly here now. This is a taste, but it is fleeting. Find that state that does not flee. To abide in that stateless state of thoughtless awareness is the ultimate meditation. It is not a doing, however. By and by, it becomes one's natural way of being. One is finally fulfilled at home. There is no longer any seeking, any desire. To be without desire is pure bliss. This is the end of the spiritual search, or all search for that matter. Seeing becomes clear. When the mind is still and calm, its mechanics, the way it works, are revealed. Mind is a movement in its working. It can move forward, projections, imaginations, or backward, memory. It can pull, desire, attract, or push away, fear, repel. This is the mind in its most rudimentary functioning. Nothing needs to be taught or cultivated. Love, kindness, compassion, forgiveness, acceptance all come along as gifts of awakening. Again, Sat Chit Ananda, being, consciousness, bliss. This is the summation of self-realization, the three in one, the Trinity. This writing is a gift from the whole back to the whole. It is an outpouring of energy from source back to source, and thus completes a circle. It is not a means to an end, but rather an end unto itself. Presence Power. Insight from the Depths of Being, Chapter 4. Peace prevails once again. All the wealth of the world cannot substitute for the inner wealth of being. Formless, spacious emptiness, free of thought, identity, past, is what the discovery is all about. Discover this again and again, until the discovery becomes ever abiding. Oh, what a treasure to behold, to be. The radiance of 1,000 suns cannot compare. This is to die before one dies, is the death of the ego, of the mind-made self, of false identity. It is the emergence of the timeless, the deathless, the unborn. Do not wait until you are on your deathbed to discover this. There is no greater joy than the joy of being, to simply be. The running around of lifetimes comes to fruition when one discovers the depth dimension, present moment awareness, the here now, being. Outer circumstances and situations are always changing, but when one is established in being, one is home wherever one goes and regardless of what happens in the external world. This inner peace is changeless, yet fresh and ever new. This joy is uncaused. Nothing needs to be given for it to be there. Rather, all else needs to be taken away, so to speak. Thoughts, emotion, desire, etc. Then this joy is self-luminous. It shines by itself naturally. This is our natural state. This is our birthright. Just look at babies. This joy only needs to be rediscovered. There is an inherent joy to just being. Until the joy of being is discovered, life is an endless running around in circles, an endless doing. It is all too easy to get caught up in doing. One can never do enough. 1,000,000 lifetimes aren't enough to do everything under the sun. Once the depth dimension of being is rediscovered, suddenly one can finally relax. This is what all the running, all the searching has been for, to find the peace, joy, and bliss that is at the heart of oneself. There is no greater realization in the human kingdom than to realize one's true nature. This is why we are here. And the song goes on. It is indeed endless, timeless, and eternal. This is your nature. A balance must be achieved between doing and being. Once the being dimension has been discovered and established, it must be integrated into daily life. The world is too caught up in doing. One can do endlessly. One can also be endlessly, but rarely does anyone know how to be. The key is to bring the two together, integration. Entering the state of presence is really entering another dimension. Nothing changes in the outer world, but one enters into one's inner world. As within, so without. The inner world of silence, stillness, peace, joy, and purity of consciousness then becomes reflected in the outer world. This writing, like all else done in presence, has become a sacred act. Much love and light are poured into these words. Returning to this work, either through writing or reading, is a sheer joy. Presence is impossible to define. It is not for the mind. Presence, at best, is an experience. It is the experience of no experience. Thoughtless, yet aware, is the whole knack of it. One has become a flame of pure awareness. All the normal mental, emotional, and sensory functions are there. However, they are done and seen within a vast, spacious awareness. Like the sky, you are that awareness. The clouds, thoughts, feelings, and all inner content are what come and go. Unless this dimension of spacious awareness is discovered in this lifetime, one will go on searching in external things for inner fulfillment. The basic needs are few. No amount of material wealth can ever substitute for inner wealth. This inner wealth is being, consciousness, bliss. Again, Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat, Chit, Ananda is every human's birthright. We are born from the divine. However, we appear to lose it in the process of growth. The aim is then to rediscover it later in life. How does one know these things? Again, once one comes to rediscover the inner essence, there is certain intuitive knowing that comes along with it. Unmistakable knowing, such as this is the goal of life. This is the reason we are here. No one can teach you these things. The inner conviction is unshakable and unmistakable. Once the mind has served its purpose, again one returns to the inner calm, joy, peace, and well-being of being. This writing has become an impersonal journal of sorts, a journal of presence and being. Although ultimately there is nothing to say from the depths of silence and stillness within, words can be shared from that inner wellspring. These words are not autobiographical. There is no identity or mental construct there to comment about itself. Rather, there is just spacious awareness reflecting upon itself. The ego, mind, has dissolved for however long. There is no mind here to think about what is being written. Rather, thoughtless awareness filters thoughts through the mind. In this sense, whatever is being written is fresh and never new, even if reread again and again. These words do not come from the mind and thus do not lose their freshness. This is the miracle of writing from presence. Mind is a movement, that's all it is. Mind is a moving stream of energy, either forward into the future or backward into past. Either way, this movement is outward. When attention comes to rest, the inward dimension of being arises. This is the art of meditation. Attention is a unique human power. However, for most people, it is continuously directed outward in 1,000 different directions. The Buddha is one in whom attention has come to rest inwardly. Only then is nirvana realized. It is always here, now. One just continually goes on missing it, and it is merely a matter of attention. Everyone is where they need to be, and everyone is in their mind. The whole objective here, how to step out of the mind and into the ever-present reality that we are. This is the whole effort of the Buddhas, how to wake up and stay awake. There is no greater treasure than this. Otherwise, we're all in a prison of mind, and unaware of it. One cannot conceive of the miracle of freedom until one is free. How to get free? Now that is the question. The first step, realize you are not the mind. What more can be said about no mind, about the depth dimension? Being is the ultimate discovery a human can make. It has to be an individual experience, the experience of no individual. Otherwise, the individual is always seeking, always wanting, always searching for something. This is just the energy of attention going outward into the world of form. When attention comes to rest back at one's center, one has come home. Otherwise, one is a vagabond, always seeking for fulfillment in the external world when the true treasure lies within. Once one has discovered the inner wealth, one can go anywhere and will always be home. Every moment is new. There is only the eternal now. One must continually die to the past. The past is mind. As one lets go of thinking and remains aware, one is immersed in the timeless, ever-present moment. In truth, one is this timelessness. There is no distance, no separation from what you are and what the universe is. All is consciousness. This is oneness. This is enlightenment. It is a powerful practice to abide as pure awareness. One needs a silent mind and intense alertness. By and by, the practice falls away, and this becomes one's very way of being. It is such a joy to just be. The fullness of emptiness. This sounds paradoxical. Much spiritual truth is in the nature of paradox. If one is alert and aware enough, one can sense the very movement of attention. Attention can flow outward into sense perception and the world of form. It can also flow inward into thinking, emotions, memory, conceptualizations, etc. With a silent and still mind, attention comes to rest at the heart or center of one's being. Abiding here is the secret and essence of meditation. Once one comes to rest one's attention in the here and now, the dimension of awareness opens up. The outer world is still the same, but the inner world has drastically changed. There is no longer any noise. There is no thought, no memory, no imagination, no projection, no content of any kind. Yet there is a fullness, a wholeness, a holiness. One has entered the sacred space of the divine. In truth, one is the sacred space of the divine. The discovery of inner spaciousness is enlightenment. It is always there, has always been there, and will always be there. It is there before the birth of the body and will be there after the death. It is the primordial consciousness of the universe. Call it God consciousness. It is what we all are. It is what we come from. It is what we go back to. How does one know this? It is an eternal knowing. Just as one knows a déjà vu has happened before, one knows one's being once one rediscovers it. It is unmistakable. One has carried this consciousness for many lives and will carry this consciousness endlessly. Silence is best. This must be an inner silence, an inner stillness. There is no substitute for it. For all the madness of the world, inner silence, stillness, is the only cure, the only salvation. This must be discovered on an individual basis. Individuals will add to the collective. The attempt of this writing is to share that inner peace, joy, and wholeness that is the nature of consciousness. As such, the source of this writing is consciousness, and the recipient is also consciousness. Consciousness recognizes consciousness. This is awareness of awareness. Presence Power. Insights from the Depths of Being, Chapter 5. Where is love in all this? Good question. Love implies the existence of the other. In this state of oneness, there is no other. This doesn't mean there is no other to love. On the contrary, all is love. There is no subject and no recipient, no duality. This state of oneness is really a stateless state. There is no content here to be called a state. Even emptiness does not suffice. In truth, no words approximate it. It is beyond all categorization. Mind is not absent, just totally bypassed. Fullness, wholeness, oneness. The intensity of this sourceless light can be overwhelming. This is the mystery of the universe. It cannot be understood. It can only be. Release all intention, projection, and desire. Allow attention to come to rest in the present moment. This is the doorway. Desire has a pull. This pull brings one out of the centeredness of being into an imagined future. Watch this movement of attention and relax it back into the now. Abide in the here now as much and as deeply as possible. This is the depth dimension. It is an essential realm of life. It is life. Without the discovery and integration of this depth dimension in life, one exists only on the horizontal level. While the horizontal dimension is essential to life, without the depth dimension, life will not be complete. If one's attention and awareness is only on the horizontal dimension of life, something will always be missing. What is missing is the depth of here now. Just as one cannot live in the horizontal dimension alone, one cannot live in the depth dimension alone either. An integration of the two is necessary. This is why we are here. Just be. There is no movement within, just silence, just stillness. All else is vast, spacious awareness. This purity is untouched by anything, thought, emotion, desire, fear. All may arise and subside within this spacious awareness. It is absolute. Contemplating this awareness is a form of meditation. Really, there is nothing to contemplate. Yet there is a joy in this awareness expressing itself through words. Otherwise, abiding as this awareness is the purest joy. There is nothing to do, just be. Being is the undiscovered dimension in the world. Oh, how much more harmonious would this world be if everyone were to discover this. To simply be, the joy of being. Be here now. There is nowhere else to go. All is a movement of mind. Osho once said, "The whole misery of man is that he is unable to share his being." This writing is an attempt to share being. Thinking is a great power if used properly. When not needed, allow thinking to come to rest in awareness. There is no greater peace or joy than to rest in being. It is indeed the peace that passes all understanding. This writing has become a living journal of presence power. What a joy to share consciousness with consciousness. This is a giving of source back to source and what it's all about.